By 2035, nearly 30 million people will live within Dhaka. That density makes it one of the most crowded urban spaces on the planet, and it is putting an immense strain on the city's housing supply. If we look at a heat map of property demand from 2019, the bottleneck is obvious. Capital and construction are severely concentrated right here in legacy neighborhoods like Gulshan, Mirpur, and Uttara. Looking directly down at these residential blocks, you see the physical limit of that demand. There is virtually zero open ground left to build on. When you combine that absolute lack of physical space with a near 10% inflation rate driving up the cost of building materials, inner-city expansion hits a hard economic ceiling. Yet capital keeps accumulating inside this perimeter. We are now looking at a $2.84 trillion real estate market trying to operate in a physical footprint that has maxed out its capacity. Building upward in the center has reached its functional limit. Dhaka is forced to expand beyond its legacy borders to avoid a terminal economic plateau. To relieve that pressure, capital and construction are leaving the old center and aggressively moving into the surrounding suburban rings. This map traces that outward migration. You can see the development vectors driving directly into the northern and eastern outskirts, specifically targeting areas like Ghazipur and Narayanganj. The focal point of this expansion is the Purbachal New Town project, a state-backed initiative acting as a massive release valve. It operates at a vast scale, 6,227 acres, structured into 30 distinct sectors, and engineered to hold 62,000 apartments. It also includes plans for a 111-story super-tall skyscraper called the Legacy Tower, which will anchor a massive new commercial complex in the district. And heavy infrastructure is actively being constructed to bridge the gap. Elevated metro rail lines are cutting right through these developing greenfields, physically linking the new outskirts back to the old city. This outward expansion functions as a state-orchestrated relocation of Dhaka's economic center of gravity. As the footprint of the city expands, the regulations governing how that land is used are tightening. Buyers are arriving with a new set of baseline expectations. Post-pandemic habits mean they require dedicated remote workspaces and integrated smart home technology built directly into the floor plans. To prevent this new expansion from repeating the gridlock of the old city, the government introduced the Detailed Area Plan, covering up to 2035. This establishes strict zoning rules, enforcing rigid height restrictions, and carving out mandatory green zones that developers cannot legally touch. Before breaking ground, builders now have to secure environmental clearance certificates and comply with the 2020 National Building Code, which mandates green building practices and specific structural safety tolerances. Look at the mid-rise structures going up today. Every concrete frame and scaffolding setup has to pass complex engineering and environmental audits to stay operational. Mastering these complex engineering and legal frameworks is no longer optional. Developers failing to adapt are being systematically filtered out of the construction pipeline. This physical order is backed by a massive overhaul of how the city tracks property. For decades, land ownership in Dhaka relied on fragile, unorganized stacks of paper files stored in vulnerable local offices. Today, the Ministry of Land has digitized 75% of the city's land records through a centralized system known as e-Porcha. Buying property now requires navigating a heavily monitored transaction process. Buyers and sellers must execute mandatory digital transfers of title, or mutations, pass thorough legal audits, and clear strict anti-money laundering protocols. When you factor in corporate taxes and an immediate 4.5% VAT on all new apartment sales, the cost of doing business makes it nearly impossible for informal, small-time builders to survive. The ecosystem demands institutional, highly capitalized corporations. By 2025, Dhaka's real estate market has officially matured out of its chaotic early phases. Capturing a piece of this trillion-dollar capital means operating strictly within a planned, digitized, and fully compliant framework.